What's up, everyone, and welcome to the new season of Mind Your Mental podcast. It has been such a long time, back and better than ever, and we're starting off with something very light this season: suicide in the Black community, which isn't light at all. But one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss it is because I feel like there's still the myth that Black people do not die by suicide, and let's make sure that we talk about the facts of it, not the folklore. So if you are new to the show, my name is Dr. Raquel Martin. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, professor scientist, and podcast host, as you can clearly see. And I specialize in Black health and well-being, clinical psychologist, liberation psychologist, all of that good stuff. And suicide in the Black community is a pretty significant issue. In fact, suicide in the Black community has been increasing year after year after year for at least 5 years. So it's incredibly concerning. Additionally, the greatest population that is likely to die by suicide are youth. So that's like one of the most concerning things out here. So I think it's important to break down the myth of the fact that Black people don't die by suicide, and how it really starts to perpetuate this underreporting and this stigma in the first place. So one of the main reasons that I have found with youth who I've assessed and adults who I've assessed when it comes to thoughts of not wanting to be on earth anymore, is lack of community, like lack of access for someone to talk to about it, feeling as though they're isolated in their experiences. And it's not true at all, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that when it comes to mental health and mental wealth and well-being within the Black community in the first place, a lot of times we do have a house business stays in the house mentality, which I'm not gonna act like never happens. Like, I was very much told by my mother, like, house business stays in the house. Like, you know what, don't have everybody up in our business. But that kind of thing can help you to a certain extent, if you want to keep up a facade of certain things, but it'll also hurt you in the long run. So one of the most important things I think everyone needs to take from this episode is that when it comes to suicide, when it comes to no longer wanting to be present, when it comes to having increased risky behaviors, which is kind of a suicide risk that kind of goes under the radar, I think it's the most important thing to name it, not bury it. Now, one of the biggest things is when I've done suicide assessments with children and with adults, parents get freaked out by the number of times I say, do you no longer want to live? Have you thought of suicide? How often have you thought of suicide? If you were going to kill yourself, what would it look like? Do you have access to weapons? And the biggest thing is, of course, you have a shock factor. I'm a mom, and they hear the words and they're like, I don't want you to put the thoughts in their head. If we're talking about suicide risk, if I'm asking you these questions, it's not because I just decided, hey, the sky is blue. I want to ask so-and-so about suicide today. I have no signs that this would be helpful. It's because something came up, right? So one, I'm always very clear with my language. I always state, have you thought about killing yourself or harming yourself? Because they're two entirely different things. But I also check in on pretty risky behaviors. So there's passive suicidal ideation, which is really the thought process of not wanting to be present on earth anymore, but you don't have a specific plan. There's active suicidal ideation when you're actually thinking about killing yourself, you have a plan. But then there's also the thing that I don't think is assessed as much within the community, let alone the Black community. And that's when people have increased risky behaviors and they're doing any and everything without any thought of safety because, what's the worst that could happen? I don't want to be present in this world in the first place anyway, right? There is a significant amount of growing risks for Black youth, but I think one of the biggest things is there's access to everything, right? There's access to drugs. I mean, I feel like when I was in New York, you could have DoorDash weed, which is insane. Technology is great, but we should also be concerned. But then when we think about the social media implications, there's also access to a ridiculous amount of messaging. There's upward social comparison. It used to be, there's always been bullies, but it used to be that you went home and at least you got to escape from the bullies at some point in time. Now they're always with you because you have your phone. And if they're not on in person at recess, they're on Instagram. If they're not on Instagram, they might be on TikTok. If they're not on TikTok, they might be on Snapchat. I do think the youth still use Snapchat. I would say they're on Facebook, but my students recently told me Facebook is for old people. So apparently, you can escape it from Facebook. But there's always access to someone who may be trying to attack you when it comes to youth, or maybe trying to make you feel bad about yourself. And there's also so much access to being able to compare yourself to people who only show a highlight reel, right? So one of the most important things that I think when it comes to acknowledging the fact that there is a high suicide risk, there's an increase in suicide for Black youth, is to one, name it, don't bury it. But two, I think it's important to kind of normalize checking in and acknowledging the fact that it's not, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's not odd to, if you are constantly surrounded by individuals who speak negatively about you, if you are constantly around environments that oppress you, if you can't see positivity around you, it's not odd to have some realm of passive thought about like what would it be like to not be present anymore. When I've had these conversations before, like one of the things that can be horrific to parents is just being like, well, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to live. And then we go down all the stressors that they're dealing with, and not only the stressors that they're dealing with, but the lack of acknowledgement with the stressors, simply because, a lot of times feelings aren't discussed, and it's not always intentional. Sometimes it's the fact that like you're working every single second of the day to pay bills to create the life for your children. So sometimes you forget to check in. When we go down the list and I talk to the parents about it, I'm like, well, now that we've gone through all these things, and now that your child has shared everything that they're going through, all the thoughts that we have never thought of at their age, or all the things that we didn't know were present, do you think you would actually, never have had a thought about like, what would it be like to never have to experience like this difficult environment? And being honest about it, right? Because I think that's the biggest issue. Like, there's not really a space where people are able to be open, especially youth. A lot of times the thing that I used to get growing up was like, well, what, your job is school. Like, how hard can it be? Like, I have to work multiple jobs. Your job is school. A lot of parents have given that message. I think they still give that message. I try not to. And thinking that because children are younger than you, because they're youth, that they have no stressors. But someone who sees a lot of youth in session, as well as teaching them as a professor, there's like a completely significant, there's a different realm of concerns that they have. More youth than I was thinking about at my age are thinking about the environment. I never even thought about the environment when I was growing up. I mean, I knew it was there, gravity exists, we're on a floating rock, but I never thought about whether the ozone layer would, completely dissipate by the time I'm in my 60s. I never thought about the fact that like so-and-so just uploaded an ugly picture of me, or I need like a new makeup routine, and comparing myself to someone who is wholeheartedly like 25 years old and a millionaire, but they're acting like they're younger. So I think I should have a skincare routine like them. And I also didn't have to deal with like the whole COVID pandemic, or not having a prom, or worrying about graduation, or any of that, or even having more access to messages about things that are negative towards me, right? Like, social media is great when it's done well. Like, there's a ridiculous amount of engagement. You can like really check in on people, but it's also like a ridiculous amount of comparison that could be exhausted at all time. I remember my in-laws saying they're so glad that they did not have to rear their children in the time of social media, because I truly don't know how it's going to work for me. Like, in my mind, I'm going to say that the boys don't get social media until they're in high school. But like, I don't know the future. I might like one day they're having a great day, or one day I'm so exhausted that I just hand them the phone and tell them, please do anything but talk to me at this moment. I just need a minute, right? And then they create an Instagram. Like, there's no way to know. So when we're thinking about it, I think it's also important, if you want to have a conversation with your children about this, not only about suicide, but also about mental health in the first place, check in. And you don't have to make everything a lesson. I have found that Black parents do this a lot. It's me. I am Black parents. But check in to see how they're feeling without judgment. Save the judgment for maybe when you talk to your friends, or the other parent who's involved. But like, one of the reasons why a lot of times I've heard youth or kids or children like complain about talking to their parent is like they turn everything into a lesson. Like, I really just wanted to share my feelings, and then they're saying, well, you over here worried about this, this music artist and getting these concert tickets. I wish you knew, your math homework the way you know these lyrics. And it's like, well, what does that have to do with this? Like, why? Like, why? I can totally understand why they frustrated with you, right? So you also have to create a safe space for your youth to talk about things, right? And when you think about safe space, I don't want you to think about like a physical environment. Like, it's great to think about a safe space as a physical environment, right? Like, I want to talk about like the living room or their bedroom or something like that as a safe space. But when it comes to engaging with anyone, not even just your children, but everyone in the world, a safe space is going to be you. Like, you need to be the safe space for your child, right? Like, and it's not even just children, because just because youth have the greatest increase in suicide, dying by suicide, doesn't mean that it's not increasing across the board when it comes to the Black community, because it is, right? So not only when you're dealing with children, but also when you're dealing with friends and family, like, you have to think about like what you're a safe space for. Are you a safe space for communication? Are you a safe space for conflict that doesn't like result in degrading, right? Because so many times you can disagree with someone and then it ends up with you guys going toe to toe. Or if you're having children, it may end up on you calling them disrespectful and putting them on punishment. But like, are you a safe space for conflict with appropriate conflict resolution? Because so many times I'll hear people talk about like, don't want to disagree or not having conflict with people. But the issue isn't like that breaks down relationships isn't conflict, it's poor conflict resolution, right? So like, are you a safe space for appropriate conflict resolution? But also, what are you a safe space for that's unhealthy, right? If you are around your children and they hear you making jokes about the queer community, you're a safe space for homophobia, right? If you are around your children and they hear you making colorist statements or racist statements, you're a safe space for racism, right? If you are around your children and they start communicating with you and then you cut them off because you talking about they don't know what they're talking about, you're a safe space for like aggressive or poor communication. If we're talking about tips to actually work on creating environments where youth feel comfortable talking to us, and as a result, likely decreasing the likelihood that they have thoughts of suicide or die by suicide, we also have to think about the way that we create safe spaces for our children, not only for healthy things, but for unhealthy things, right? Because there's so many times when you're like, okay, I asked my child to talk to me and they didn't talk to me, so it's the child's problem. I don't know why they don't come to me. But then you don't think about the previous encounters of when the last time they talked to you, how did it go? When's the last time you talked to them without giving them a lesson? When's the last time you checked in with them just to check in with them, not because you needed a chore done or something like that? When's the last time you actually tried to have a conversation with them or engage in activities that they actually enjoy? Because that's one of the biggest things too. I find that when you get old, when your children get older, you do have to like court them a bit, right? Like, it used to be my youngest, I can't keep him off of me. That child wants to climb back in the womb. I don't know what I did with him. And my older son, Russell, who is 6, is very much in dad mode at this point. So I always make it a point to prioritize not only spending time with both the boys, because I travel a lot for work, but also giving him one-on-one time and making sure I understand what he's interested in, right? Like, now sometimes, honestly, most times he's not in the mood to talk about different stuff. I'll ask him about his day and he'll just talk about how he does not like school. He doesn't understand why we have to go to school. It's a whole thing. But most of the time I will get some helpful stuff. Like, he shows me a picture and he talks about the glitter pens that he enjoys. So I got him glitter pens for his birthday. Or we make sure that I look at the books that he's like. He's very much into reading, so we read together. But it's not the same as it used to be. It used to be as easy as soon as I sat down, he would sit down next to me and curl up the way his younger brother was, and it would be pretty easy. What I'm trying to do is cultivate an environment where he feels comfortable talking about little stuff as well as big stuff, right? Like, listening to him without judgment. I'll ask some key questions just to get a little nudge. Like, yesterday he told me his friend, now mind you, my son is 6, got a cell phone that he shares with his brother, and they were watching YouTube on the phone. And they were watching Bluey. Now, I asked a lot of questions with trying to be like under the radar, because I, reached out to the school afterwards. But like, the fact that, you don't want to scare them, right? Like, you got the children who never talk, so you don't want them to, make them think you actually interested, or they said something that was like too much, because then they're gonna stop saying it, right? So I was like, right, cool. Oh, what were you watching? That sounds fun, right? How long did you watch it? That's great. Oh my goodness, that seems so cool. Were there any bad words or anything? All right, cool. And then I just write everything down like I'm in session and tell my husband, we got to follow up because somebody got a cell phone and they're only 6 years old. The normal stuff, right? So thinking about cultivating those environments in the first place. But also, one of the things I think is also really, really helpful is a lot of times we make an assumption that people are too young or too strong to struggle in the first place. And I will say, when we're in a realm where a lot of times we tell youth, like, you got to be twice as good to get half as far. So we put that on them. And a lot of times we'll have high achieving children and they get like missed out on when it comes to making sure they're okay. For example, like, when it comes to ADHD, there are multiple types, but one of the big types is there's inattentive and there's hyperactivity disorder. Inattentive is actually more likely for young girls to have, and it's also more likely to be missed because inattentive means they'll zone out. They'll be like little space cadets, but they're not making any noise, right? Like they're not interrupting the class, they're not being loud, they're not walking around because they're having difficulty fidgeting. So it's easier to be missed than hyperactivity disorder, which boys are more likely to show. Like when they're interrupting the class, they're talking and things like that. These are both hyperactivity, ADHD disorders, but one is more likely to be missed, right? I find the same thing with high achieving people and high achieving children. Like too often, high achieving boys and girls and adults are the most overlooked. So instead of thinking about it as like this person is too young to be going through these difficult issues, or they're too strong to struggle, or they're doing so well at school that I can't possibly think of them not wanting to be present on earth or having a tough time, I encourage everyone to stay curious, because you may not feel as though it's dismissive. You may feel it's a strength, right? Like this person is so strong. I don't need to check on them. They got it. Oh my goodness, you're not doing as poorly as your brother or your sister or your cousin is. Also, like, don't compare children, because a lot of times parents will wonder about like, why do the children can't stand each other? Why the siblings can't stand each other? And it's because of y'all. Y'all keep comparing them. So like, it's not always like, oh, it's natural. It's like they grew up hearing that you should be like your sister, and now they can't stand their darn sister. So back to the point. Thinking about it as staying curious, not dismissive. Because even though you may see it as a strength, you may see it as like, oh, I don't have to check on them because I know they got it. That is still actually being pretty dismissive, right? We don't have little adults. We are contributing to the growing of them being adults. We're trying to create fully functioning humans, but they're still children. Like for young girls, the brain stops developing at like 25. For boys, it's closer to like 27. And we might as well say 30 because it takes a while to get to where you need to be. So one of the biggest things I would state is also stop assuming that someone is too young or too strong or doing too well to be struggling when it comes to performance pressure or even racism-related stress in the first place. And think about safety plans, right? Like I think so many times we're afraid of discussing things, but one of the things I tell clients a lot when they're dealing with anxiety or depression is come up with like a safety word. Like just come up with like a safety word. Most of the time I say make it a fun word. So like it breaks the tension, like falafel or waffle or rutabaga or something. But if your child is having a tough time and they may not be in a space to talk, but they do want you to know that they're having a tough time, they may say something like rutabaga, right? So you know to keep an eye on them, and you know that they will come to you when they're ready to come to you, but they're not ready to come to you now, but they do need an eye on them. And I think those are some of the kind of like the easiest tips. So like bottom line, one, Black people not committing suicide, not dying by suicide is a myth. The suicide rates of the Black community have been increasing for at least 5 years. Another helpful thing to understand is making sure you're creating a safe space for your children and for everyone around you, right? But think about what you're creating a safe space for. Are you creating a safe space for healthy communication? Are you creating a safe space for compassion? Are you creating a safe space for homophobia, racism? Like think about it that way as well. Two, normalize the fact that this is something that everyone goes through, right? Like there's no age limit. There's no minimum age or maximum age for going through a tough time, right? To going through a stressful time. We really do need to acknowledge the fact that not only as individuals in this world, but also someone who specializes in Black health and well-being, there's so much stress with dealing with racism. And I always say it's racism, not race. There's no such thing as race-related stress. There's no issue with my race. There's the issue with what my race brings out for you. And that's racism, right? But there's no age limit or minimum age for children experiencing racism. In fact, more children experience racism in school than any other environment, right? And when they do get to a point where they don't want to communicate as much and we have to, double check and see signs more, it's easier to miss, right? So going right into making sure that we also don't assume that someone is too young or too strong to struggle in the first place for everyone in the Black community. And think about safety plans. Think about like maybe a buzzword like, oh, okay, they're saying they're having a difficult time, rutabaga. I know to check on them in 10 minutes. Think about checking in with them to help them identify like the full range of emotions and try to discuss what they need at different times. And you could do the same thing for you, right? One of the things that's really important is to also model the way that we deal with difficult emotions. There's so many times I see parents trying to insulate their partners or their children from understanding that they're going through a tough time. But as someone who genuinely hopes to make one mistake in front of my children, at least one mistake a day so that they can understand how I deal with the mistake, I also think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we all have difficult emotions, and this is how I deal with them in a healthy way. So maybe they also know what it looks like and know that you don't have to dismiss how you're feeling. So come up with plans. Talk to them about the range of emotions. There's a difference between being happy and ecstatic. There's a difference between being hungry and famished. There's a difference between being sad and depressed. And you need different things at different times. Like if you said that you needed a little snack, you haven't eaten in an hour and someone gave you a cracker, you'd be like, oh, thanks. If you said that you hadn't eaten in days and someone gave you a cracker, you would be like, you have lost your Black mind. But I'm gonna help you find it, right? Because you're using this the words are the things that help us to figure out how to help, right? So like we can't say that we're fine all the time. We also can't be the people saying that we're fine all the time. Because when you do that, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, the people who actually care about you don't know how to serve you. Like, just think about it that way. Are you saying you're hungry or you're famished, right? Are you saying you're angry or you're just upset or irritated? And by modeling that, we actually make it normal for our children to talk to us about anything, whether it has to do with suicide risk, whether it has to do with being sad, whether it has to do with, they're so happy they don't know what to do, whether it has to do with anxiety in the first place. So model what you want to see in your children. Be okay with humanizing yourself in front of your children too, so they can know like, oh, my mom, when she's depressed, she takes a minute. When she's irritated, she communicates this way. Because what you want to do is cultivate an environment for your children where it's so immersed in compassion, where it's so immersed in honesty and them being seen, that any environment that doesn't model that, it feels foreign to them and their alarms go off, right? I want you to be so immersed in compassion and integrity that as soon as you're in an environment that doesn't model or embody that, you recognize it because it's the opposite of what you're used to. And you know that that's not an environment for you. But so many people are used to being in chaos that honestly, the inverse is true, that like being in healthy situations is what feels abnormal to them. So yeah, I think I've said all I wanted to say on this topic, y'all. Starting off strong. This season, we're going to have more focus on longer conversations, of course, with the Black community. But I thought suicide was really important to acknowledge because it's not talked about enough. I don't think it's broken down enough, but I also don't think it's normalized enough with the fact that like when people are having really, really tough times, which a lot of people do have at different age ranges, they can think about what it's like to no longer be here anymore. And it doesn't mean that that's the end of a conversation. It should actually be the beginning. And we want to make sure we provide them with resources and normalize it, especially within the Black community where, mental health, I think the stigma is breaking down, but I think we can do a better job around it. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. I'm so excited about this season to delve into some greater topics. Y'all consistently ask for more than the 6 or 3 minute clips. So that's what this season is all about. Remember to be kind to yourselves. 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. That's just math. And thank you for tuning in.